This video, we're going to build a square footage calculator. It's fairly straightforward. We just have a column, a grid with labels and spin boxes, and as we change the values, the square footage is automatically calculated. All right, I'm going to do this very, very quickly. Drop into design view, go to that, add some controls. I want a column, and admittedly, I'm going a little faster than I can talk here, so I'm going to slow a little bit down. I'm going to add a label. Grab a grid, and I'm going to zoom out here. There we go. So our column, let's add a 10 spacing. Grid, let's add a 10 spacing. And I want 2 columns, 2 rows. Let's go ahead and grab some labels. Drag, drop, and some spin boxes. And first thing, we're going to have to look for that little white line, drop it, and down at the very end, look for that white line, drop it. Ta-da! Very, very easy. All right, let's scale this a little bit. And I want to grab this label and let's stylize him. Whipping through a lot of this because, to be brutally honest, we have done a lot of this before. All right, so width. Zoom way in. I did misspell it. Height. Let's actually change the IDs. I'm going to call this SB width. Let's call this SB height. And let's change this to 0 SQFT. Now we need to make some connections, so I'm going to select our SB width, select our SB height, drop in here, and we're just going to simply make a function to, you guessed it, calculate it. So I'm going to say function calc, and let's say var num equal SB width. I want the value, not validator. And take our label here. Last but certainly not least, we go down here and we just need to modify this on clicked. Very, very simple. We're just going to change that to our function we just created, calc. You may be wondering why I'm doing these in connections rather than inline like I normally do, just showing different ways that you can do it. Save and run, and let's test this out. Uh-oh, something's wrong. We didn't, oh yes, we did not do this correctly. What did we not do here? This is on clicked. We want on value modified. Save, run. Let's try that again. Ta-da! Works. This video, we're going to make a converter. It's going to be very simple, but also extendable. We're going to go inches to feet and feet to inches. So for example, if you wanted to say 16 inches is 1.3 repeating feet, or we could go feet to inches. 16 feet is 192 inches. I actually didn't know that. Interesting. All right, let's see how this thing works. Drop into design view here. You may notice that I kind of prefer building up the design, then flipping into the code view to make things work. Feel free to do it however you want to do it. Make a column here. Drag, drop. Draw. Let's zoom out here. There we go. Just going to scale this about what I think it's going to look like. There we go. Now I want to add a grid in there. Drag, drop, and I need a button. Drag and drop. Our button's way, way down there. Grid should not be that high. Let's go with 300. There we go. We'll scale that out later. This guy's going to snap over to the center. Ta-da, there we go. Let's actually do this with, trying to think of a good number. Let's do 250. That looks a little bit better. All right, now, speaking of our grid, we want 2 columns. And let's go with 10 spacing. Column, let's go with 10. All right, let's go ahead and drop some components in here. We're going to need a few labels actually. So drag drop, there's label 1. And this is going to be, let's call this type. A combo box. Drag drop. And let's go ahead and grab him. And let's say from. Make that look a little prettier. There we go. And now I want a text field. This is where we're going to actually just, you guessed it, type right in there. Ta-da, there's our text field. Let's actually give this an ID of txt from. And we'll give this an ID of CMB items. Don't really need to do any of that. I just want to do it. Actually, this is going to be CMB type. There we go. And let's grab another label. This is going to be our result. And let's grab one final label. And let's give this an ID of LBL result. And let's make this thing stand out just a little bit here. I'm trying to think of a good size. Let's go 15. Make it just a smidge bigger. I'm going to type in the word nothing just so we can tell there's nothing in there. And let's go with 125. And we can do pixel perfect if we really, really wanted to. But really what I'm demonstrating here is it doesn't really matter. You can do it this way. You could actually do a binding and bind it to the parent. You may start getting errors if you do that though. There's our column. Let's kind of shrink that down just a smidge. All right, so we've got a type, a from, and a result. Save, and at this point, this is when I say, good day, sir. I am done with the designer, and I'm going to actually go in here and start cranking out some code. So I know I'm going to want some functions. For example, I'm going to want to convert, and then I'm going to want a function for each thing we're going to convert. So function. And let's go ahead and say var value from .text and var ret. Just going to give that just a 0 for now. Then I'm going to switch. And I want CMB type .current index. And I'm going to have to add a few things in there real quick, but we're just going to add that switch. And I'm going to say case 0 break. That way we don't have fall through. And the first one's going to be inches to feet. And then we're going to grab this. Second one's going to be feet to inches. So from there, you can pretty much figure out we're going to want a few other functions here. So inch to feet. And of course, we're going to want a feet to inches. Don't really need to do this. I could do all this inline right in the switch statement, but I'm just breaking it out. There we go. So now I've got these two. So inch to feet. and we're going to say value. Follow pretty much just the same design pattern here. That way we've got inches to feet, feet to inches. All right, now once we get that value, ta-da, it's just going to go right there. And then we just really need to make the magic happen. We're going to say return, and inches to feet is just the value divided by 12 because there are 12 inches in every foot. And then we can flip this around. Super simple, super easy. All right, pretty much almost done. Last thing we need to do is go ahead and convert that. Let's save. And we're missing some critical information here. We need to add a model here. I'm going to say list model. I'm going to do this the hard way just to show how that works. And let's go ahead and call this ID CP items. And let's go text. Make sure we got these lined up here. So the first one is going to be inches to feet. And then we can just simply add another one called feet to inches. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and save run. Let's test this out. So we're going to say inches to feet. I want 55 inches. It's actually 4.583 repeating feet. And if we wanted to do, let's say, feet to inches, we've got 5 feet. That is going to be 60 inches. This video, we're going to make a dice roller, and this is a little bit more complex than what we've been doing here. So we've got different type of dice, and these would be like a D4, a D6, a D8. And in case you're wondering what this means, it's a 6-sided dice, a 4-sided dice, 8-sided, so on and so on. So we've just got a label and a spin box, and we can say I want 1 D4, 2 D8, and 3 D12s. Go ahead and calculate, and it's going to be 28. So it's going to roll the dice every time we hit calculate. Very, very cool. All right, so let's jump in here. We want to build a few files first off. We're going to build this in a list view. So we're going to build a dice model and a dice delegate. Add new. Let's go in here. So there's our dice delegate. And we've got our 3 files. So first off, our model. Model is going to be a list model, and I'm going to do the first one just so you can see. Let's call this ID dice model. I'm going to do the list element, and we're going to have a name, a number, and a value. So the name is, in this case, going to be a D4. So this is a 4-sided dice. The number is just going to be how many sides, or the multiplier, are on that dice. And let's go ahead and add a value, just for giggles. And I'm going to grab the rest of this off the screen. That way you don't have to sit here and watch me type this whole model out here. So we got D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and a D20. If you ever play any tabletop games, you know that D20 is like the granddaddy of them all. Boom, D20s. All right, delegate. This is going to determine how this thing is actually rendered out on the screen here. So import cute quick. Actually, cute quick. There we go. Controls. Grab whatever version of controls you're working with here. And let me bring up the example again. So what we're doing here is this delegate. So each item, we're going to determine how this is drawn. And we just got a giant label with a spin box. That's pretty much all there is to that. So let's go ahead and do a component. dice delegate. And let's go ahead and add an item in here. And let's call this item, the ever descriptive item name. Anchors, left margin, 10, width, let's say the parent.width. Height, I want this to be fairly high. If we look at the example here, there's some spacing here. So I want to actually make that 100, which is fairly high. All right, let's go make a row now. Spacing 10, just to give a little bit of spacing. And now we want to add a label. Font bold, let's go ahead and add true. And I want to do pixel size fairly large, let's make that 25. And text, remember, we are going to pull from the model. All right, so we got that. Now let's go ahead and do a spin box. And say ID, SB number. We want a from. Let's say 0 to 100 value, and this is going to be from the model. Just in case anybody gets a little confused about that. We are in very much out of beginner land and into intermediate and advanced land. So some other tutorials out there that I've looked at, they would call this super advanced QML. This is not. This is from beginners into intermediate and advanced. So, all right, now let's go with on value changed. And let's take that model dot value equals the spin box number value. And then let's go ahead and console.log the model value. I just want to see when that's actually rendered. All right, so once again, whenever you see the word delegate, we're delegating or figuring out how something is rendered on the screen. So what we're really controlling here is the rendering of these individual items from the model here. All right, let's go ahead, save that, and on to the fun bit here. What we need to do is actually build our interface. Our interface is going to be a little bit convoluted. So I'm going to jump into our designer here. I'm going to say cute quick controls. And we've already got our custom QML files displaying up here. Now I want to do a column. Let's grab this guy. And let's say we want a spacing of 10. And let's go ahead and fill this parent. Ta-da! Maybe zoom out a bit, that way you can see what that looks like. Remember, control middle mouse allows you to zoom in and out, or you could just do this guy right here. All right, now let's get our list view. Remember, when you see view, you're working with a model view. Ta-da! It's going to put that in there. And even going into advanced, it's not going to help us, so we are going to have to dive into the code at some point. All right, so we've got our list view. Let's go ahead and give us an ID of list view. I'm going to actually dive right in here. Ah, yes, thank you very much for being helpful. For the model here, I'm going to, actually, did I goof that up? Sometimes I get a little delete happy. Nope. That's one thing I love about the editor is it shows you where those brackets are. So I'm going to grab this whole thing and I'm going to say dice model. All right, same thing with delegate here. Ta-da. Go ahead and grab this. Say dice delegate. Makes it much easier to read than having all that in one giant file. Now I'm going to cheat just a smidge, and I'm going to grab some stuff off the screen. I'm going to say width, parent.width. I'm going to get rid of this height, but I'm going to say focus true. That way this will get mouse and keyboard input by default. And I'm actually just going to copy and paste some anchors in there. Ta-da! All right, now in here, I want to do a row. And I'm going to call this ID row. I know, descriptive ID. Width is going to be the parent width. Height is going to be 50. And we're going to anchor this bad boy. We want to anchor this to the bottom. And let's give this a bottom margin of 0. I just want to make sure there's absolutely 0 space there. All right, so inside this row, and if I pull this up so you can see what I'm doing, it's actually this guy right here. It's going to be invisible, but I want to put it right there, and then we're going to build all this interface out. So first things first, let's go ahead and get a rectangle. And let's go ahead and say anchors.fill, and we're going to fill that parent. Let's give this color, and let's say gray. And at this point, I'm going to actually save run, see if this looks anything remotely like what we want it to be. Yes, it is. All right. So already we've got a lot of functionality baked in here, and we just need to add this in and then calculate all this out. So let's kill that. I'm going to say label. Why did you not like this? This thing's acting squirrely for some reason. Sometimes I think this editor gets a little bit confused. So I'm going to say label. Yeah, it says unknown component. What are you goofing about? Ah, that would be why. I got the wrong controls in there. Maybe the editor knew exactly what was going on and I got a little goofed up. As you can tell from some of my mistakes, this is an end-to-end video. I am doing this in real time, 0 edits. Color, and we can actually just say we want white. Text is going to be a total 0 because we got nothing in by default. I am going to actually cheat just to save a little bit of time, copy and paste, bang. And let's go ahead and auto indent selection. All right, now our button. Let's go ahead and grab our button. Goof that one all up. All right, text. And then I'm going to drop some anchors in here. Again, just going to copy and paste, save a smidge of time. All right, save run. Let's see what our interface looks like. Looks beautiful. Nothing happens though because we don't have the code in here yet. So what we're going to do now is when we click this calculate button, we're going to read all this stuff out of this model and then calculate some magic number here. So let's go up here and we are going to dive headfirst into JavaScript land. So fasten your seatbelts. All right, got our beautiful function. I'll wire it right into this. Now for the meat of this. Var model is going to be the list view dot model, and var total is going to equal 0 right off the bat. Now we need to check each dice. I should have said dice delegate, but you get it. And we'll say for var I equal 0. I is less than model.count. And let's go with increment I. So what's going on here? Really, we're just grabbing this list model, this guy, and we're going to say for each item in the model, we're going to go through it. And now how do we do that? This is the tricky bit, and this is something a lot of folks like to not cover because it is tricky, but we're going to dive right into it. So we're going to say item model.get. And really what we're doing is we're getting a model item. So what we're doing here is we're saying, let's say this first one is 0. We're going model get 0. So it's going to go into our model and say, grab this first item. It's going to hand us this list element. All right, now once we get this, I'm going to say if item.value is greater than 0, then we need to do something with this. So I'm going to console.log name Now, where am I getting name from? You guessed it, the model. So if we go in here, we got name, number, and value. So I can just grab this. All right, at this point, I'm going to save this. I want to run this. And let's take a look at our app output here. Oh, we got some stuff open here. Let's kill a lot of this stuff. I'm going to start that all over. Save, run. All right, app output. QML column cannot specify EN. That's just something I'm going to really ignore. That's just some of this stuff down here, these anchors that I copied and pasted in. Going to ignore that for now. It's not really hurting our app. What I want to specifically focus on is when I click calculate, I want to make sure it's going through here. So if I click this, nothing happens. Why? Because we got to actually increment. You can see we're incrementing. Calculate. All right, good. Now we're going through. Here is D6. Sure enough, its number is 6, so it's a 6-sided dice, and its value is 2. Also, we have a D10. D10, its number is 10, and its value is 2. Pretty simple from this point forward. We can say take the number, multiply it by the value. Actually, not specifically true. We're going to do a little bit of JavaScript, and there's going to be a bit of copy and paste because I'm not a JavaScript whiz. All right, go up here. All right, now that we know that we can actually go through that model and get the individual items, roll each dice. And we're going to say for roll, actually var roll equals 0, and I want to say roll is less than the item.value, and roll plus plus. That's one of the bad things about my neighborhood is I have noisy neighbors. I swear I just heard a car drive by, so if the microphone picked that up, I do apologize. I try my best to soundproof my little room here, but it's not the greatest. I've talked to other Udemy instructors, and they actually have like very, very expensive soundproof rooms with professional grade microphone. I can't afford any of that stuff, so I just do this very, very down to earth, just like my videos. So we have a minimum of 1, a maximum of the item's number. In case you're wondering where we're getting that number from, again, from the model. And let's go ahead and we're going to do a bit of copy paste land here. So I'm going to say var subtotal equals bang, and there's our copy and paste. This is from a previous video where we took a range. We had a range slider, and we did a minimum and a maximum, and that's how we get that. A little bit of math there. Now that we have that subtotal, we can say console.log and our roll, because I want to see the individual rolls in case whomever we're playing this board game with goes, oh, wait a minute, I don't believe that. I want to see your actual rolls. You can say subtotal, and then total equals the total plus that subtotal. Whew, that is a lot of typing. Once we're out of that little guy, we've rolled all these dice. Then we can simply say console.log. There's a whole lot of console logging going on here. Total. And we want to actually display that total. That way we have a running total. Now, LBL total.text equals, you guessed it, total plus the actual value total. So quick review here. We have a model. We have a delegate that's going to determine how each item in that model is being displayed. And we've got a simple interface with a whole lot of JavaScript behind it. We could actually take this JavaScript and put it into a separate file, but I'm trying to simplify this just a bit. Save and run. Let's test this out. So I want to take 1d4 and 2d8. 15. How did we get to 15? We have all that console output to tell us. And we can do this pretty much as many times as we want. Now, I'm a big fan of criticals, so I'm going to do a few d20s, and whoa, 94 damage. Okay, I have a $1 billion idea. I am a married man, and sometimes when I ask my wife, honey, what do you want to eat? She has no idea. So frustrating. So sometimes I'm like, you know what? How about this? She says no. How about that? She says no. So I've developed this app. You simply tap me and we're going to have Asian. Or if she doesn't like that, I can tap it again and we're going to have Asian again. If she doesn't like that, tap it again and Mexican. All right, there we go. If I had a longer list, it'd probably be a little more random, but you get the point. We're just going to have a mouse area, and then when you click on it, we're going to run some animations. It's going to randomly select from a list of places to eat. I just have different types of cuisine, like American, Mexican, Italian, Chinese. All right, $1 billion idea. Bear with me here. Sorry, ladies, but let's just face it. When you're hungry, you have a hard time picking where you want to eat. So I'm going to say qquick.controls. Let's go ahead and add that. I'm going to say property, variant. Let's call this places. And this is where I'm going to cheat just a little bit. Ta-da! Italian, Mexican, Asian, American. You can add whatever you want. McDonald's, Burger King. If you've got some special little restaurant down the street, add as many as you want. Point being, we're going to make life super awesome. Let's call this ID area. And let's go ahead and go anchors.fill. And I'm going to fill the parent. Again, I'm doing this video and all the videos in this section end to end, meaning 0 edits. So I do apologize if you hear a dog barking, a car horn, something like that. I try to not edit these videos as much as humanly possible just so you see every little thing in real time as I'm doing it. All right, so the mouse area is going to fill the entire screen. On clicked is when we're going to actually do those animations, and the label, this is where we're going to actually display what's going on. So I'm going to say ID, LBL place, anchors, center and parent. Font bold, and I'm going to say true, and font dot, I want pixel size equals 25. And the text initially is just going to be tap me. Now, if you remember right, this was animated. So it was like growing and shrinking, growing and shrinking. It's not doing it yet because we haven't added any of those animations in there. So let's start working on some of this. First thing I want to do is do a function pick. Just a placeholder so I don't forget about it. Now I want to do a sequential animation here. So, Sequential animation is going to be where we're going to grow and shrink this bad boy. So I'm going to say ID Annie start running, and this is going to be true. Loops. I want this to be animation.infinite. And this is going to be a number animation. Target is going to be LBL place. The property is going to be this guy right here. And we're going to cheat and just copy this. So that's the property we're going to play around with. And then we want to go to 45. Duration is going to be 1 second. Now remember, the sequential animation will run them in sequence or one right after another. So we can just copy and paste, and we're going to take that to 25. And because this is going to loop infinitely, it's going to go 45, 25, 25, 45, blink, 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 back and forth, back and forth. Wow, that is crazy. All right, so let's actually go here. And I'm going to say Annie start is going to be stopped. And then I want to say LBL place dot font dot pixel size is going to be 45 because we want that to be bang right in your face. And then we've been in the demo, we were rotating it and we were fading in and fading out. So we want to reset all that. So I'm going to say LBL place opacity is going to be 0. Rotation dot 0.0 actually equals 0.0. All right, so we've got a couple things we need to do. We need to animate the selection, and let's go ahead and animate the fade out. Save run. Let's see what this looks like so far. Our animation's already running. Now, if I tap that, it triggers that. So we've got to do these animations. All right, so first things first, we've stopped that animation. Now we need to do some sort of fade out, kind of like a fade to black sort of thing. If you ever listen to Metallica, that's one of my favorite songs. So this is an opacity animator. Call this Annie, fade out, running by default, and I'm going to actually scroll down so we get some screen real estate here. By default, this is not going to be running. Target is going to be LBL place. From is going to be 1, meaning completely visible. 2, 0, completely invisible. Duration is going to be 1 second. Now, this is when we want to call our function here. So when this is completed, on finished, call that JavaScript, bang, or I should say call that function. All right, let's take a look at what we need to do here. Just in case that was already running. Like if you get a little tap happy, you don't want it to act kind of dumb. There we go. So we're going to stop all animations, reset our label, and then start the fade out here. So let's test that. I'm going to go here, and ta-da! And then it'll call this pick, and that's where we're going to pick, no pun intended, pick up where we left off with the other animations. All right, let's kill that. Now we want to do a parallel animation. Now a parallel animation, remember, runs them at the same time. Think of it almost like threading. So parallel animation, ID, we want this Annie selected. Actually selection, there we go. And running by default is going to be false because we want to be able to trigger this thing off. And let's go with numbers animation. And we can actually kind of steal some of this stuff here. So like we can say this. So we're going to have a target, and then property is what we need to actually do. And we're going to actually just steal this whole thing right here. Ta-da! So we're going to say the numbers animation is going to modify the LBL place, or that label. The property we're going to modify is the pixel size, and we're going to go from 0 to 45. And we're going to do that over, let's say, 2 seconds. We can modify that and play around with it if we really wanted to. I want to take this opacity animator. I'm just going to copy and paste this because now we're going to make this thing come back in. Notice how we're getting a duplicate ID, so I'm going to get rid of you. I'm going to get rid of this. And target is going to be the place, and we're going to go from 0, invisible, to fully visible. Want to get rid of that on finish because we don't want to trigger that twice. This is going to come in fairly fast, but we want to slow it down just a smidge. And we also want to rotate this. So we're going to give this a rotation animation. And let's go ahead and just grab some of this. And we don't need that. We're going to go from a 0 to a fully rotated. And we're going to do that over 2 seconds. And we want to do this a specific direction. And I'm going to say rotation animation dot counterclockwise, just because I feel like doing it counterclockwise. The only thing we've really neglected here is our pick code. And this is where we need to do a little bit of math. So I'm going to say var I equals math.floor. And there's probably a much better way of doing this. Admittedly, I am not a JavaScript expert. Math.random. And I want to multiply that by the places. And then we're just going to simply set that label. We're going to say LBL place.text equals places. And then we're going to grab that item. And then lastly, turn that animation on. So we're going to say Annie selection dot start. All right, assuming we haven't goofed anything up, quick recap. Mouse area, when we click, it's going to stop the animations, reset the label, start the animation, and then it's going to fire off all this stuff. We're actually looking at these. The opacity animator, when that's finished, is when we're actually calling our JavaScript, which is going to start another animation. A little complex, but seamlessly, it should look pretty nice. So I'm going to say tap me, and we are going to have American for dinner. Or if you don't like that, we're going to have American for dinner. It would be a little better if I had a larger list. There we go, Asian. But you could fill this out with whatever your significant other really wants to eat, whether it be pizza, burgers, fries, ice cream, gummy bears, whatever you really want for dinner. This video, we're going to make an image viewer. The real fundamentals of what we're going to do here is we're going to have a local directory, not actual embedded resources. We're going to have a swipe view, and we're going to be able to swipe between those images, and they're going to scale. These are actually desktops that I have on my computer. So let's look and see how we can make this happen. We're going to go new. We're going to go down to swipe view. And again, I'm going to do this video with 0 editing, so you're going to see every single nasty little flaw that I make. So we're going to turn this guy, ta-da, into this guy. To do that, though, we need to work with the local disk, and that's not something QML can actually do directly. So we're going to have to make a C++ class. So let's kill this. We're going to go in here, right-click, add new. C++ class, let's call this dir helper. Q object. And you see a lot of vendors out there like, hey, we get this super special high performance class that'll load files off the disk. This is really all they're doing. So it's really not super hard. We're going to include qdir. We're going to include qfile. Actually, let's do file info. And let's go ahead and include qfile info list. And again, disclaimer alert. I'm going to get tongue-tied. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm doing this video without any editing. My neighbors have a new dog, and the dog likes to bark, so I'm really hoping the microphone doesn't pick too much of that up. qdir. My office right now looks kind of comical. Basically, what's going on is I've got like blankets and stuff everywhere to absorb the sound, so you guys hopefully don't hear a lot of what's going on outside in the real world. So we're going to set path. So what we're really doing here is the dir helper class is going to basically allow us to select a directory, and then it's going to return a list of files back from that directory. So that's what's going on here is I'm just doing a path and a set path. And let's say a qstring list, and this is going to be files. All right, now because we are working with C++ and we want to use this in QML, we need to use the Q property. And I'm going to say qstring. The name is going to be path. So read is path, write is set path. Notice that's spelled a little differently. Sometimes it lets us edit it, sometimes it does not. Path changed, I really don't need a notify, so I'm going to just get rid of that. Bang. So I've got read path. See, yes, IntelliSense tried to help us here, so I'm going to comment that out. Now suddenly it lets us. Oh, that is super picky like that. And then I'm going to copy and paste, and I'm going to say Q string list. I realize the IDE is trying to help us follow their, when I say their, Qt's way of doing things, but just don't like it, to be brutally honest with you. So we're going to say Q string list. Let's call this files. Let's get rid of this. I kind of screwed this all up. Sometimes I cannot read, talk, and type all at the same time. There we go. And let's call that files. That way it lines up. So if we call files, it's just going to call this, which is going to return that. And it's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and fill some of these in. Right-click, refactor. There's our path. Set path. Files. And we're going to add this definition. Bang. Now in the path, we're going to actually return the dir.path. In case you're wondering what's going on here, it's just this guy right here. Ta-da! So qdir, when it first is created, it actually gets the current directory. It's actually very helpful in that sense. And then we're going to set path value. And then the files. We're just going to simply say q file info list equals, and we want to go dir dot entry info list, and we're going to say qdir all entries qdir no dot and dot, and we want to make sure these are files. Super helpful if I actually did it case sensitive. There we go. So really what we're doing is we're saying we want an entry info list, but we want it to be filtered. We want all entries, no dot and dot, and files. You should know what all that means if you follow the prerequisites for this course. But basically we're just getting a list of files. All right, so let's go ahead and let's build our file list here. So I'm going to say qstring list, file list, return file list. Then we're just going to do a for each q file info and list. And let's go ahead and say file list. We're going to go ahead and append the info.file path. Just in case you are completely lost and you skip that day in Qt Core, really all we're doing is when the application loads, we're saying, hey, the dir is the current path, but we want to be able to set path to set it to a destination on the hard drive or the network, could be the network. And then if we call this files, then we're going to actually get a listing of files. We're going to convert those from QFileInfo list into just a QString list and then return that string list of files. So basically we're just saying, give me all the files in that directory. Whew. All right. Now what we need to do is go in here and we're going to do some surgery here. I'm going to get rid of this just because I don't want it. I'm going to get rid of this just because I don't want it. And we're going to keep this super, super simple. So don't want these pages in here. What we do want to do is actually import our dir helper. So to do that, we of course need to do a QML register type. So let's flip back to C++ land. Let's go in here. Let's add our includes. So we're going to include, and we want to include dir helper. And let's go ahead and drop it right here. And I'm going to say QML register type dir helper. Let's go ahead and give this a snazzy name. com.company dir helper. I want this to be major version 1, minor version 0. And let's call this dir helper. Let's give this a build, make sure we didn't goof anything up. Ta-da! All right. Now we can go in here, go into our QML file, and let's go ahead and import this. Actually, we're going to import controls first. Actually, we got controls. What was I thinking? Let's go qtquick.window 212. And let's go ahead and import our com.company.dir helper. And we want 1.0. Save this, give it a build. All right, good. Now I want to add in dir helper right here. And then we're going to give it a path. Let's check this right here. It did uppercase it. Drat. All right, let's lowercase that again, just because I want it lowercase. There we go. I should be able to name the things I want to name, darn it. So we're going to say path. And this is where I'm going to give it an actual physical destination. There are things like dialogues and things like that where you can pick an actual destination, but we're not there yet. And it says invalid property name. I'm sure if I give this a good build, it'll suddenly, let's see if we can fix this. Super cranky about that for some reason. Path, it is lowercase. We're going to just ignore that for now. I think that's just an issue with the IDE being cranky. So I'm going to get rid of this footer right here because we really don't want a footer. And then in here, we're going to say component.onCompleted. And I'm going to say var files equal dir helper.files. And then let's go ahead and do a for var I equal 0. We're just going to go through all these files here. We're going to say I is less than files.length. And then we're going to increment I. It's still bugging me that this is saying property invalid. Grr. All right, we're going to move forward. We may have to debug that and figure out what's going on if I screwed something up. Console.log. It's one of the dangers of doing these in real time. Loading. I've talked to a lot of people and said, why do you want to see me make mistakes? And they're like, well, we want to see how you figure these mistakes out because we're making the same mistakes. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. And some other instructors will heavily modify their videos to the point you can't really tell how they got from point A to point B. So I get that. We're going to say create component. And we've done this before, but we did a nasty string. This time we're going to actually load up you guessed it, a QML file. So I'm going to go right here. And I'm going to rename this. Actually, I'm going to remove that altogether. Let's add new. And let's call this image page. Let's go into our beautiful little image page. And I'm going to copy and paste just a smidge of imports there. And item, property, alias. This is going to be a source. And this is going to point to an image. So I'm going to say I want a page. Anchors.fill. Got a little ahead of myself there. Parents, there we go. And in here, we want an image. And so our property alias is just going to point to this image's source. And we're going to get rid of that. Actually, I'm just going to comment it out. There we go. And I'm going to go into here. I'm going to go image, preserve aspect fit. Pretty simple, pretty basic. If we really wanted to, and I'm going to copy and paste this in here. If you wanted like a test image, just in case. Actually, let me uncomment that. We're going to test this real quick. Getting a little ahead of myself here. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to actually load this up. And remember, in the previous video, we actually did a long string. We're going to do the preferred method, or the easy method, which is we're going to just tell the engine to create a component based off a QML file. So it's just going to load that up. All right, now that we have that component loaded in this string, basically, we're going to say var page. It does a lot more than load it into a string. It actually parses it and error checks it and does a few other things. But we're going to say component dot, and we're going to create object. And the parent is going to be the swipe view. Let's set some properties here. So I want the width to be a little behind on that one. There we go. All right, so this is going to be 640. Let's go ahead and comma. And if you're wondering what I'm doing here, I'm very badly trying to set the properties. There we go. 480. So let's go ahead and save and run, see what this looks like so far. Nothing. Grr. All right, so let's figure out what's going on here. We've got and then component. Did we actually log some of that? No. File not defined, tab bar not defined, QML line 26. So file.length. This is part of our problem right there. So we want to go files.length. File is not defined. Where are you seeing that again? Ah, files. That is just being the bane of our existence here, isn't it? Let me kill that stuff out. Save and run. All right, so it's just going to be this default image, but you can see there's a certain number. So those are the files, and we have the full paths to those files. So now we just have to set those files in there. So let's kill that. And let's say page.source. Remember, that's that property alias equals, and we want file whack and plus files and the index. So really what we're doing here is we're saying out of the list of files, get the actual file name, for example, this guy, and set it as the page source. The page source is the alias to that image. All right, let's save this. Let's run it, see what it looks like. Ta-da, it works. So some major takeaways from this beyond my horrible typing and getting sidetracked is it's actually fairly easy to integrate C++ with QML. And whenever you start interfacing with the file system, it's pretty much mandatory that you interface C++ and QML. And that's kind of a glass ceiling that some people really get stuck on. But once you understand the foundations of it, it's extremely easy. We've learned a lot in this series, and well, I want to leave this on a high note. What I want to do is completely take the training wheels and throw them right in the trash. What we're going to do here is build this. It's going to be a fully functional text editor. Now, as far as text editors go, it's pretty basic, but we're going to show how to integrate back in C++ with the front end, and we're going to talk about some elements we really haven't touched on yet. All right, so let's go ahead and kill our example. This is going to be another one of those where I just don't edit it. You're going to see every little mistake that I make, so I apologize if you hear car doors, dogs barking, things of that nature. So we're going to make a backend C++ class called appropriately backend with QObject. Next, finish. You should already know C++ before you started this class, but I'll try to slow it down just a smidge. We're going to import imports. Basically, we're going to do QCore application, QObject, QFile, QTextStream, and QDebug. So basically, we're going to read a file using a QTextStream. I am going to paste because I just absolutely go bonkers trying to deal with the editor sometimes. These Q properties, remember, because we're interfacing with QML, we need properties. Properties composed of a name, a read function, a write function, and some sort of notify. Don't necessarily need all those, but I've got them all in there. And then with our public, we're going to have path, set path, data, set data. I promise I'm not going to copy and paste this whole thing. I'm just doing some of the simpler stuff just to save some time. And then we've got some signals, path changed, data changed, and all these line up with our properties. And then for private, we're just simply going to have a QString. Ta-da! All right, let's save that. Let's flesh these out. All right, now that we've got all that in there, and path is going to be QCore application, and we want the application dir path. So basically, we're just getting the current directory. And path, append, and this is going to be the default file that we're going to edit. If you're running this in root, you're probably going to have a bad time. You shouldn't be running anything in root anyways, assuming you're on a Linux style box. Now for a path, we're going to return path. Set path is pretty simple. Path equals value. I heard a dog barking in the background. I'm hoping the microphone didn't pick that up, but I live in a smaller neighborhood, and sometimes you'll hear people arguing and things like that. I've got some neighbors that just love to make their life public, and it gets a little frustrating when I'm trying to record. All right, so because we've changed something, we want to actually emit the path changed. And back in data. So what this does is it's actually going to read the file. So let's go in here and let's say qfile file and path. Now let's go ahead and say if file.open, and we're going to do a QIO device. If you skip this day, you probably are in way over your head. But basically what we're doing is we're using qfile to open the file. If we cannot open it in read-only mode, then we're going to say qwarning. Could not open file. Actually, I'm going to say could not read file. There we go. And then we're going to return absolutely nothing. However, if we've gotten to this point, we can actually say file.close because we have a file that's open. Let's go ahead and say q text stream file. So we're just going to take that open file, shove it into a stream, and then read all the contents of that stream back. Makes it super easy. Qt does all the encoding for us. And we want to do a read all. Return value. All right, now that we've got all this, we can probably just grab most of this. Set data is where we're going to actually save the file. So pretty much same thing in reverse. Going to write only, could not write the file. We're not going to return anything, so we can get rid of those. And here's where life gets a little bit interesting. We can safely get rid of that, and we can say stream, shove that value into the stream, and then let's go ahead and flush it. Now, Qt does do all of this automatically in the background, but I like to do it just in case somebody takes a very, very legacy version of Qt and tries to do this. So we're going to emit that data changed because we changed the property. Now when I say change the property, we're actually talking from a QML perspective. See, data changed. So when we write, we should notify it that that data is changed. Not fully going to use that whole life cycle in this program, but you get the point. All right, so we've got all of this. Let's go ahead and build. Ta-da! No build errors. Love that. All right, good. Now, we need to tell QML that this thing is a thing and that it actually exists. So include backend. And let's go ahead and do a QML register type. Backend. Give it a name, so I'm going to say com.company.backend. There's companies out there that will try to sell you something like this for $1,000, talking about how complex and hard it is. It's really not super hard. All right, so now that we're registered our type, we can actually use this in our application. Let's go ahead and give this another build. Make sure we didn't goof anything up. We're good. Run. QML pops up. Life is good. We have no errors. All right, let's dive into QML land. This is where we're going to drastically depart from where we were. And when I say drastically, I mean things are about to get a little bit harder for us here. So I'm going to import, and I want to do the Qt quick dot controls, and I want to do the newer version 2.5, and then I'm also going to use a dialog here. So we're going to do import Qt quick dot dialogs, and feel free to use whichever version you want. And I think at this point we need to actually stop and slow down just a bit here. So we're going to go into our resources, right click, and we're going to open an editor. I'm going to add some icons. And I've already got some icons already in our project. Just going to add them in there officially. Ta-da, ta-da, there we go. Now we want to change window. We're going to change from window to application window. And there is a major difference in these things. And we're going to cover those in just a sec. But first things first, we want to add that backend. Ah, we haven't imported it yet. That's the problem. I was like, why didn't that work? All right, import com.company.backend. And we want to do 1.0. Assuming we got that lined up with our QML type that we registered. Backend, there it is. ID, give this an ID of backend. On path change, let's go ahead and do a console.log. Path. And our other one was on data changed. Just want some sort of feedback, even if it's just in the console, so that we know that worked. Now, application window. This is where things are going to get kind of crazy. We're going to introduce some new concepts here. We're going to do some file dialogues. We're going to do some actions and some toolbars and all sorts of great stuff. So first things first, we're going to add some dialogues. So I'm going to say file dialog. And that's coming from this import right here. Without that, it's just going to say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. We're going to call this ID open dialog. Title is going to be please choose a file. Folder is going to be shortcuts.home. Select multiple, pretty self-explanatory there. We're going to say false because we don't want to be able to open multiple file. Select existing, we're going to say true because we want to make sure the file we're opening actually exists. All right, so on accepted, this is where we're going to do some stuff here. So we're going to say backend.path equals the open dialog dot file URL. Make sure it's URL, not URLs. And then update the editor, which we haven't built yet, so bear with me. I'm going to take this, and now we want a save dialog. I'm just getting all the non-visual stuff out of the way first. And we're going to say, please choose a file, shortcuts home, multiple false, existing false, because we don't want to overwrite the file. We're going to get into more of that stuff in the future, in future videos and tutorials. But right now we're stuck in basic land trying to break into intermediate and advanced. So backend path equals the open dialog file URL, and then we're going to update that editor. Actually, we're going to update the backend from the editor. All right, now that we've got the non-visuals out of the way, this is where we can actually have some fun here. So what we want to do now is we want to make some actions. And actions are a little hard to understand if you've skipped Qt widgets. But basically, you can make an action and put it in multiple parts of the application. So let's go ahead and just make one and show you what we're talking about here. action. IDE does not want to help us out. Call this ID action new. All right, so let's go ahead and say text. And I'm going to say QSTR. And now we're going to say icon color. We're going to say transparent and icon.source because the icon itself is just an image. And then we're going to load up some sort of resource. So we're going to copy. There we go. All right, now what we need to do here is something when it's on triggered. So the action, think of an action like an invisible button, but we can put that button on the screen in multiple locations and suddenly make it visible. So to trigger that, we need some type of editor, right? So let's go ahead and make a scroll view way down here. This is one of those videos where it's not going to be really apparent what's going on until the very end, and then you're like, oh, I get it now. All right, so text area, ID, editor, focus is going to be true because we want to get keyboard and mouse input by default. The default text, we're just going to say hello world. Select by mouse, we're going to say true so that we can actually select the text in there with the mouse. And then persistent selection, we want to say true for this, otherwise copy and paste won't work. All right, so now that we got that in there, we have an idea of what the actual editor is. Let's save and run, see what this looks like. So here's our editor. What we're going to do now is add menus and a toolbar. And we're going to add the actions in there. But first, so on triggered, we're going to go ahead and say, once we trigger this action, we want to do something with that. So what do we want to do with this? Well, we want to actually go ahead and say editor.clear. Now that we have one action built, we can actually show you what the action does. And I apologize, it's a little bit crazy, but let's go ahead in here and I'm going to say to do add actions. And then I'm going to go ahead and say menu bar. This is part of the application window, and that's what makes application window different than a normal window. And we're going to say menu bar. And I'm going to say menu file menu. Actually, let's call this menu file. And this is going to have some menu items in it. This is the cool part. We're just going to take that action and we're going to say action new. Now we have a very simple, very repeatable design pattern. Let's go ahead and save and run. Let's see what this looks like here. So up there somewhere, there it is. Ta-da! New. Very, very cool. And we got our icon in there and everything. That right there is actually the action. This is the menu, which we haven't finished filling out yet. So I'm going to say title. Save run. Now it's a little more obvious what it's doing there. Very, very cool. And let's call this menu edit. Notice how we've got action new. So this is what I mean by you can actually reuse actions. New, new. So let's change that to edit. And let's go ahead and in the header, let's get out of there, which is part of the application window. We're going to add a toolbar. So you kind of get a sense of what we're doing here. We're actually emulating a desktop application. And I'm going to give this a row. And in the toolbar, we're going to add the tool buttons. And I'm going to say display is going to be an abstract button. And we want the icon only because we don't want to display the text as well. And then action is going to be the action new. We only have that one action so far. We're going to build a bunch more. But you can see now we have menus and toolbar buttons. Let's save run, see what that looks like. So there's the button. Here's the menu. I have it duplicated just so you can see that we can reuse it over and over again. And if we click it, ta-da, it just works. That is super, super awesome. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to build a bunch of these actions. So this is going to get kind of crazy. All right, so we've got that. Let's go down here and let's say action open. Open, and if you had a good naming convention, you can just very easily figure out what we're doing here. And here is where things are going to get a little interesting. We'll say open dialog. And we want to go ahead and crack that open. Now in the open dialog, ta-da, remember I said, ta-da, we're going to do something here. So what's going on is we're cracking open that open dialog, letting the user select some sort of file when we're saying backend path equals open dialog file URL. But now we want to take the editor dot text equals the backend data. So what's happening here is we're saying backend set this path. The backend's going to try and load that data, which is actually reading the file in the background. And then for file save, we can say backend.data equals the editor.text. So we have our open. Let's go ahead and do save. Let's go here and say save. And then I want the save dialog. .open. And then we want some just very basic actions here, like copy, cut, paste. So I'm going to go ahead and go bang. Speed this up a bit, maybe. This is what I meant by if you have a repeatable design pattern, it's pretty easy to figure out what you're doing. Whip through this really, really fast. And let's do action paste. It gets way more advanced than this. There's actually some really good examples up in Welcome, and under examples there's a full text editor, but just cracking it open, you're not going to have a clue what you're looking at, unfortunately. So from here, it's just plugging actions in. So we got new, action open, action save, and we're just plugging these into the file menu. And then for edit, we want action copy. Cut, and let's go ahead and do paste. Now we have our toolbar, pretty much the same thing. We're just going to slam a bunch of these in there. So we got new. We can just copy and paste these. We don't need to sit here and type all this out. This is kind of the boring part of design where you just are fleshing out the interface. But really what I'm showing you here is, hey, menus and toolbars are extremely easy to work with here. Save our work, run it. Let's see if this thing actually wants to work. So I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to say, this is my new file. This is multiline. I'm going to grab something off the screen here. Go down here, and we're going to hit paste. Do we not have paste in here? Where's paste? Action paste. Did I screw that up? So I've got new open save copy cut paste. Did I miss that? So there's new open save copy cut and there's no paste. Ah, we've screwed something up in there. Ah, that's probably what it is. The icon's invisible. Ah, I misspelled the icon name. It was a lowercase p, so it was there, it was just invisible. It was probably also at a 0, 0 width and height. Anyways, let's redo this. I'm just going to grab some stuff off the screen. Actually, I'm going to grab this. I'm trying to find something. My file. And I can Control P to paste in there, and there's that C++ header over here. Very, very cool. Let's go ahead and save this, and it opens up the save dialog. And I'm going to put this on the desktop. Let's call this hello.txt. Why not? Can't think of a really good name. Hit save. I'm going to hit new. It blanked it out. I'm going to hit open. Opens up our dialog. Go back to our desktop, and uh-oh, did we goof something up here? Where's our beautiful little file? Let's figure this out. So we have our save dialog, back in path, blah, blah, back in data, editor text. So it might be something in the back end. Did we have a problem? Ah, we did. No file name specified. Probably this would be the reason. We have the wrong dialog in there. Save this. Let's rerun this. Let's go over this again. So I'm going to say, hello world, this is my file. I'm going to grab just some includes off the screen, go down here and go paste. We could actually cut them, go down a bit more and paste again. And let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to go to my desktop, say hello.txt. Let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to blank this whole thing out and open it up. Let's go back to our desktop. There's hello.txt we just saved. It's 137 bytes. That editor's blank. I'm going to select that, hit open, and voila, there's our file. So, major takeaways from this. You can actually build desktop applications with QML. The complexity does go up, but I think we've got the foundational knowledge now. Some things are going to be easier than others. For example, when I was testing this, I had to use black and white icons simply because it would not display a color icon. There were tips and tricks and ugly hacks to get it to work, but I wanted something that would work for everybody. So if you try to put a color icon, you may have a bad time. And there are default system icons that exist for Windows, but not for Linux. Oh, that's sad. And then sometimes they work on Mac and sometimes they don't. So I wanted to stay away from the default system icons as well. We've learned a lot in this series, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed making it.